And welcome to the another video of a UiPath tutorial. In this video, we are going to discuss about UiPath conceptual interview questions. So there are so many videos which explains about the UiPath activities and how can you explain UiPath activities features in interviews. But in this video, we are focusing on the conceptual questions which can be asked into any RPA or a UiPath RPA interview. And I would like to inform that I have already completed one project of 6 different videos, which will help you to learn UiPath development end to end. And I have given the link of that particular video in the description of this video. Please go ahead and watch that. Before I start explaining about the questions, please subscribe to the channel for RPA project videos, RPA interview questions, Python automation videos, and Python programming videos. So this is the first question. So many times you are asked like how will you calculate the development effort for a UiPath RPA process, or that can be to any other RPA process. What we can do is like we can create a complexity matrix. What we can do is that we can keep the complexity low, medium, high, and for low it should take 1 to 2 weeks. For medium it should take 2 to 4 weeks approximately, and for high it should take 4 to 8 weeks. But now how to calculate the low, medium, and high, which we can do based on the rating. 4 parameters: business logic, count of actions, execution, environment, and count of applications, like how many applications are there. And based on that, we can keep a range. So let's say less than 5 is low. So for low, we use 1 rating. For medium, we use 2 rating. And for high, we use 3 rating. So basically, to answer the question of the interviewer, so it depends on the detailed discovery of the process to calculate the requirement. But to calculate it roughly, what we can do is we can create a complexity matrix, and we can keep 4 different parameters for the complexity. The first one is business logic, count of actions, execution environment, count of application, and then we can decide based on that it is high, low, or medium. So for high, low, or medium, we can set a range. Like for business logics, less than 5 will be low. If there are 5 to 10 business logics, that will be a medium complexity. And then if it the above 10 business logics, that will go in the high complexity, range. Okay, so based on the complexity range, we can define the ratings, and then we can reach out on the final complexity of the process. So if the final complexity is less than is low, then we can commit 1 to 2 weeks. If final complexity is medium, 2 to 4 weeks, and if it is high, then 4 to 8 weeks is the time as per the RPA standard. And these metrics or these ranges can be changed as per the process requirement. Our next question is that how will you schedule low RPA process in UiPath Orchestrator? We have to schedule jobs in UiPath Orchestrator based on the process requirement. Okay, so you can see like this UiPath bot have to download the data every 2 hours and create a UiPath queue. This is the first requirement of the process. The queue creation in UiPath Orchestrator take 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes we have to download the data, and the count of cases in the attachment or in the Excel file will be 50. And there are only 2 UiPath bots available for this process. UiPath bot complete one transaction in 2 minutes, and 1 hour is the SLA. Means once we have received one or case, we have to complete that case within the 1 hour of time. So now, how will you design this process, or how will you schedule this process? There are 50 transactions. We need 2 minutes, so we require 100 minutes for the processing and 5 minutes to queue creation. So what we can do is that we can create one job which will trigger after every 2 hours and create the queue. Okay, and now we have two bots, bot A and bot B. So what we can do is the next step that we can create another job for the processing transaction on bot A. So on the bot A itself, we have two things. We'll download the data first and then process the data. So it can process 25 transactions as per the 2 minutes of time. So 10 minutes we have kept for the queue download and creation of the queue, and then 50 minutes we are using the same. We can use the same bot for processing 25 transactions. Now for another 25 transactions, bot B can continuously do processing. So it can process up to 30 orders every hour. So bot A will work as UiPath dispatcher and processor both. Now bot B of UiPath will always work as the processor. It will be consuming the UiPath queue which is created by bot A. Okay. Now let's move to the next question. So this question is very useful and asked most of the times. Like if there is a huge data file, how will you upload that huge data in UiPath? What is the best way to upload huge data file in UiPath? It can be a CSV file or it can be a Excel file. So the best way to deal with the huge data file is read Excel as data table and store in SQL database. So first we should read the uh, Excel or the CSV file as data table, and then we should store in SQL table, and then we should perform rest of the actions. Okay, so when we create the OLTP connection string, we have to provide the Excel file and mention that provide the name of the connection into the output of connect activity. Okay, so you can use the below connection string. You can just change your file path here, and this connection string will work. So once your connection is ready, all the sheets will be mounted in the connection, and then you have to select the data from different sheets. So for that you can use UiPath execute query activity, and then you can run a select query, select star from sheet 1 like that. Or let's say if you have very huge data, then in that case you have to find out some column which you can use into SQL queries. So let's say if there is a city column, so you can first select star from sheet 1 where city is Bangalore, and then the next query can be select star from sheet 1 where city is Mumbai. These queries you have to run into different execute query activities of UiPath. So there might be 4 or 5 execute query, or if you say the variation is very long, then you can create a collection of it, and then you can loop through, and then you can run a loop, and only this where clause value will be changed in all the loops. So this is how we can deal with the huge data files. Yes, so this question is regarding that how will you insert a tabular data from Excel to Outlook, or a data table to Outlook mail body in UiPath Outlook activity or UiPath email activities. So what we have to do is that we can use the HTML formatting to create the table. So these steps which are mentioned after this line, you can explain to the interviewer. So keep a file as the header string. So in header you have to define the CSS, or there might be few other things which can be defined only in the header. So one file you can create for header, and then in the same file you can keep one table tag, file number one. So now next what you can do is you can loop on all the rows of the table, keep adding tr in the beginning of the row, and close the tr tag of html in the end of the row. So within this row loop you have to loop on cells as well, or you have to loop on columns as well, and for each column you have to start the loop and add td, you have to add close td close tag in the end of the cell. So this is how when you will loop on all the cells and all the rows, you can create a HTML table. So after the loop, when your loop is completed, then you will have HTML table available in a string variable, and in to that variable you can add the closing tag also. So after closing tag, you have to close the body also of the HTML. So after closing the HTML body, and now you can save this as a separate text file. The next step will be that we have to combine both of the files, which is the header file and the body file together, and then we have to create a final body file for our email. Now let's come to the UiPath Outlook activity. So in the body option, we have to read this file which we have just created by concatenating two different files. And in the properties of Outlook mail message activity, so there is a option of HTML body. So we have to check that option. So if you want to use inline image, what you have to do is you have to add one img tag of HTML, and then you have to give the name of the image as path. But that image should be available in the email as attachment. So to understand more about inline image, there is a video which you can search send inline image in UiPath Outlook activity. So now the next question is from the interviewer that if you are not able to find the UiPath selector and even anchor element is not found. So how will you access the element? So there is one more way to perform actions in UiPath, that is by sending the hotkeys. We can check if there is some element closed by the target element. So if there is any nearby element, so let's say if you want to click a button but you see there is one image icon or there is a logo, so on that you can click and then you can take some actions from there. Tab enter, or maybe tab down arrow enter. So that is the key of the combination. And once we have the combination of keys, then we can send that key combination using UiPath hotkey activity. And we can also use multiple keyboard actions into type into activities. So the next question is, how will you create custom business rule exception message to make it more informative? So whenever there is a business related issue, so let's say if you have to process only those cases where the amount is less than 10,000. So if the amount is coming more than 10,000, how will you send a business rule exception to orchestrator or to your logs? Or let's say you are looking for a date type of data, but you find some numerical data is coming, then how will you send a message or how will you log a message that this is not a date? That is called the custom error messages or custom business rule exception messages. So in UiPath, you can create the business rule exception with custom message using the rethrow activity. And other programming languages, throw and rethrow are the good coding practices to add information to an exception. Because when if we will show direct exception message to the user might not understand the technicality of it. Okay, so we use the custom message or user-defined messages. You can check more details about the rethrow activity in UiPath documentation. This is the troubleshooting related scenario. There is a system error in your transaction, and when you are checking the screenshot which we save in RE framework, set transaction status state. So we capture the screenshot there. In that screen, the application is visible perfectly fine as it is loaded properly and values are there. So what we can, so you can see the exact answer on your screen right now. So in UiPath, when we save the screenshot, okay, that is like that screen is available, but there are other aspects, like if that element which has caused the error is available on the same screen or that is on the next screen. So if you have got UiPath selector not found error, then there is a chance that next window was not loaded and that element was available on the next screen, next window. That is the first chance. Another thing is, like there was a system lag because of so many applications were open. Even though in UiPath RE framework we close all the applications, or there might be some application which we are not closing in the UiPath RE framework in its state, so that we can check next. Now next is that in a UiPath RPA process, client is not giving you the permission to save the screenshot on the system error considering the data security. So I have seen in few UiPath processes that happens mainly in the banking and the financial sector. So what we can do is, as the solution, like we can ask the client to keep the some part of the screenshot, maybe the only header and the account number. And then in UiPath, we can crop the image with that particular rectangle coordinates. And if still client does not agree, then what we can do is we can check for some element on that particular screen, like if this button was available or not. So if this button was available, which means that the screen was properly loaded. And then we can write that status true or false in our logs. So that can be the another solution to it. And if you find any better solution for any question, please mention in the comment. It will be helpful for others. Okay, so this is the last UiPath interview question of this series. So there is one checkbox. Sometimes it appears and sometimes it not appear, but not make any difference for the process, which means it is not so important for the process. So let's say if the any element, whether that is the checkbox or any other element, it is not confirmed that it will visible or not. So what we can do is we can use a click activity, or we can use a type activity, whichever activity is applicable, and then we can make it continue on error equals to true. Because if you have used the activity and the element will not be found, then this process can raise a error, selector not found error in UiPath. So, but when you will do this continue on error is true, and you keep some small timing for to wait for the element, and then you can proceed further. So this is one thing which you can do. The second thing is that you can check for the element using the element exist activity, and that activity will return you true or false if element is available or not available. If it is available, in the if condition you have then and else. You have on the right hand side you have then section, on the left hand side you have else section. So in the then section you just keep a click activity and click on the element. If it is an in the else side you can leave as it is, so you don't have to perform any action if the element is not found. So the else side we can leave as it is. So these are the two different approaches which you can take. Hope this video was useful for you. Please forward my videos to your friends. Thanks a lot for your time.